The Spin-off Podcast Network.
Love news but find keeping up a bit overwhelming? Well, Newsable is the answer. It's your daily fix of everything worth talking about. I'm your host, Imogen Wells, and in about 15 minutes, I'll bring you what you need to know from Aotearoa and around the world and explain why it matters. Newsable tackles the big stuff without taking itself too seriously. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is brought to you by Spark Lab, offering inspiration and practical advice to help businesses find their edge. To hear more about Spark Lab, including details about the latest events, workshops, and business tools, visit sparklab.co.nz. And now, here's your host, Simon Pound.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is made by the Spin-off with help from Callaghan Innovation. Here's your host, Simon Pound.
News came out that Callaghan Innovation has a new boss. Callaghan Innovation are the government growth agency there to help move New Zealand past the primary sector to help us do something other than add more cows to the country and sell houses to each other. They're there to help foster and create great companies. They're also the sponsor of this show, something they do to get more perspectives on entrepreneurship out. So we thought we'd get the new CEO along. Vic Crone is a well-known figure in the business community from executive roles at Chorus and Xero, and well-known more broadly from her bid at the Auckland Mayoralty. To chat about that career, that bid, and what's in store at Callaghan Innovation, Vic Crone joins us now. G'day, thanks for coming along.
Hello, and thanks for having me.
Hey, I read an article in The Listener about your Mayoralty bid that they mentioned that you'd been leading billion-dollar sales organisations since the age of 27. How did you come to be in that position? What led you to be interested in kind of corporate leadership like that?
Yes, well, I'll kind of go back a little bit. So I, throughout my secondary school years, if you like, I kind of liked business and I liked music, loved music, and I liked maths. And I kind of had to make a choice in my, when I was 17 was I going to pursue performance music in terms of piano or was I going to go into business? And my dad had been in business for a long time, so I was like, I'm going there. And actually what fascinated me most about business is consumer behaviour, how people behave and how people behave in the workforce. And so that's why I kind of quickly wanted to head into a management and also a customer-facing role.
And sales is such a difficult area because it's like, it's binary. You've either got your target or you don't. There's no cheating numbers. How was that? Like, what was it about sales and sales leadership that was of interest?
Well, it was initially because I'd never done it. And I think what's really important is in building careers that you don't just get stuck doing one thing. And so the opportunity came up to lead sales for telecom retail. And again, that's why some of those organisations are very good. I'd never led a sales team in my life. But actually what I learned is that your skills are incredibly transferable. You learn so much as you go through your career, and the more different things you do, the better skills that you have to bring to something.
What led you to Xero, which is probably something that you're very well known as being the managing director of such a prominent company in this country? Yeah,
well, I'd been in telecom and communications a long time. In fact, I'd been in telecom 18 years and I went in as an analyst and I was kind of at Chorus as an executive. And then I was like, do I really want to be in the same area for 20 years? And I just didn't. And I love tech and innovation, and I wanted to do something different where I could completely experience a different type of company. And I had been in contact with Rod Drury for quite some time in telecom. I had done some work with him, and the role came up, and we kind of just said, "What do you reckon?" And we went through the process and said, yep, we're going to jump at it. And so it was great to go from a corporate regulated monopoly of Chorus into an incredibly dynamic, New Zealand innovative leader taking on the world.
That's interesting because Chorus, I saw a fascinating chat from the communications manager out of Chorus, talking about some of the difficulties of moving from being a monopoly, like Chorus was, to being a customer-led service business. How did you find that, coming from something that SaaS, like Xero, people only are signed up for 1 month versus people are locked in for forever?
Yeah, so I don't mind that change at all, and I think we're pretty agile in the way that we can think and we can adapt to different roles. So that was pretty comfortable to adapt to. It's just a different set of circumstances. The challenge, I love a big challenge. The bigger the challenge, the better, which is why I threw myself into the Mayoralty. The challenge at Chorus, it was very much around how do you relate to everyday New Zealanders, and Chorus is such an important part of New Zealand's infrastructure and our future, and so it's important that New Zealand understands that and understands the opportunities in front of them, and so that's where Gigatown, working directly with communities to help them understand that, was such a rewarding process.
That Gigatown project was the one where a million tweets went out with hashtag of the place and the like, and it had something to do with broadband. Yeah, what was Gigatown?
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And look, we annoyed quite a few people with Gigatown. Absolutely, people in Twitter and Facebook were sick of us by the end of it.
Sign of a successful campaign.
Well, yes, it is. And I think what you don't always see is the benefit that it had in those communities. And you look at some of the progress that's happening now in Dunedin and Gisborne, which were two of the biggest players in Gigatown, and they really are embracing the technology that's coming at us. And I think that's the responsibility that I felt at Chorus I had, was, with gigabyte broadband, we're going to be able to do so much more. The possibilities are tremendous. And instead of New Zealand being on the back foot and just accidentally stumbling on that, that's not what I want. I want us to be on the front foot. And that's part of what led me to the Mayoralty, and also actually into Callaghan. We can choose two paths. We can just let this tidal wave of technology happen to us, or we can actually make sure we're ready to catch it.
Just before we jump into the Mayoralty there, I've always wondered what it's like to work at a place like Xero, where you're so prominent in the local scene, and things like the stock price become the story. What's it like to be like, a leader in that company when it's up, and what's it like when it's down? Because both of those things can be quite a long way out of your own responsibility.
Yeah, I think it's so as a leader, that's just part of doing your job every day. But for your staff, actually, it is really hard, and especially when you are working so hard, putting in so many hours and going above and beyond. This is a global company, so the hours are not normal. And so, sometimes staff can feel a bit dejected by it. And I think that's where Rod Drury was fantastic in working with the executive team to ensure that our staff knew where we were going, and that actually technology companies are up and down. They're all over the place, and that's a normal part of it. And just working to educate New Zealanders. Unfortunately, in New Zealand, we don't have a lot of growth stocks, and certainly not a lot of software stocks. So in America, for example, this is normal. This is what happens every day. But here it's very unusual. So part of it is actually educating New Zealand. We want more companies like these in the future. And so, Xero has always been a good example of, I guess, taking some tough hits in terms of helping other people come behind it and providing an easier path. It's kind of like the Big Brother, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it very much is. And in that kind of Big Brother role, it's helped to lift a lot of other companies in the ecosystem it's built around it. It's kind of amazing, like, when it got up to $40 and then it went back down to 20, which is still a pretty amazing odd value multiple, really. Yeah. And then all the people in the kind of the cesspits of the comment threads saying, it's not worth anything. And it's so funny to be reduced to the stock price when it's a company that's doing so much.
Yeah, and I think it's just part of the New Zealand psyche, right? We see that in a number of different places every day with companies. And I think, what we need to try to do as leaders, not just within our companies, but across society, is to help people understand there's always a bigger picture. So, you're right, Xero's taking on the world. It's opened up capital into New Zealand in a way that we never had before. Mm. It's built many jobs, and they're high paying. And actually, when you look at the impact of that service on New Zealand customers' business, business performance, it's significant. And so that's, it's just about remembering that. And, with media and coverage, you can only really tell one point. And so that's why we tend to focus on, very small snapshots of things.
We're funny creatures, humans, aren't we? Because we take things for granted so quickly. But it's important to remember that a couple of years ago, you didn't find out what your financials were until maybe 4 months into the next financial year. And you're like,
exactly right.
Things were going well last March.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think, and we do forget, I think the average cash runway, i.e. how quickly you're going to run out of cash for small business in New Zealand, is around 3 months.
Yeah.
And so you can't have 12-month-old financial data. If you have real-time data, then you're going to be able to make much better decisions. And really, that's a part of what Xero provides.
Yeah, another thing, like you were saying in the Big Brother kind of role, is they kind of have proved the promise of the cloud, which has really helped a lot of these other businesses see that you can tack something onto the ecosystem or add to the product and build a cloud business from New Zealand.
Yeah, I think that's the big difference between, my old corporate roles that I've had and what I see with Xero and these new startups, is that they are building platforms or ecosystems, and they recognise, and I think this is where we're going in the business world, that you play where your strength is and you partner to deliver the rest. And when you partner really well, particularly through ecosystems, you create incredible stickiness with customers. I think as corporates, we used to try to do everything ourselves, and so that's why you see so many step outs in corporates that fail. And what I think the new model is much more around partnering, and it's partnering to win-win. It's not about me winning and you losing. It's actually we're both going to get what we need out of this. And I personally love that approach.
Let's look at that Mayoralty, because that role at Xero, it's a great role and it's a great company. It's a worldwide acknowledged great company, and Telecom, Chorus, both big leaders. Quite a brave move to jump into running for the Mayoralty on a ticket that wasn't the acknowledged leader.
Yeah, and look, I think, you can call it brave or stupid, actually. I've been acting like that since I was 2, when I just jumped in the deep end of the swimming pool and, just worked out how to tread water and survive. And so I love just jumping into things. I think sometimes if you think too deeply about things, you'd actually never do it. If I had thought incredibly deeply about the Mayoralty and everything that was stacked against me in terms of up against a well-known politician, like, I hadn't done a government role before, et cetera, then you'd probably say, ooh, maybe not. But actually sometimes when you just have a vision and a view that things can be done differently and better, and we can maybe talk about some of that, what I wanted to try and achieve there, then actually you just go for it and you work it out on the way. And, it was always going to be an uphill battle, and I don't mind that. I actually really enjoy that.
Do you feel like, sometimes, a win can be not winning, but changing the conversation or moving things further towards? Do you feel that some of the things you were advocating for got picked up and joined the agenda as a result?
Yeah, that's a really important point, and that's the same with Gigatown. It was about creating the conversation to move those communities forwards, and with the Mayoralty, absolutely. It was about saying, look, do we just let these people roll into these roles, or actually do we have a really good contest of ideas? And that's what I wanted to try and bring. And I think some of the areas, particularly in regards to some of the housing areas, the social impact stuff didn't get picked up enough. It's actually starting to get talked about now. Clearly the big one that was the most controversial was driverless vehicles. So I entered the Mayoralty, talking about the changes we're going to see in driverless as an example, and got ridiculed quite fast for that. But by the end of the campaign, Christchurch had announced their first driverless vehicle trial. So I think, it is about bringing some of those issues and trying to highlight some of those issues.
Yeah, and in politics, as in a few things, being early and right is the same as being wrong.
Yeah, that's right. And, I'm not a typical politician. And so, part of the challenge that I had was I wasn't coming across and communicating with media as a typical politician. Actually, I'm really okay with that. That meant that I did some things differently. I was probably prepared to make some stands. Others may not have. That's just the way it is.
Did you enjoy it?
I loved it.
Yeah,
absolutely. I loved it.
What was the fun stuff?
The thing I most enjoyed was interacting with people. So I would have met, tens of thousands of people across the campaign trail and just really listening to what is important to them. And then, there's some incredibly smart people in Auckland, so, garnering their views on how we come together. And I think, my approach again, which is a little bit different as a potential politician, was how do we build an ecosystem around Auckland? So how does Auckland Council not feel the weight of having to deliver everything, but how do we connect into the great initiatives that are going on? So it was incredible to meet so many different people and then work out, actually, how could we connect Auckland Council to some of that activity to share the load in moving our city forwards. So, I loved it, don't regret a minute of it, and
That's interesting, because some of that stuff with Chorus and Gigatown, that was also helping connect business people and civic level to move forwards. And then with Xero helping to make small business more viable, helps the economy. There's a lot of impact you can have without going into politics on society. And you probably have a little bit more freedom too, because I always think like the actual definition of power is not having to talk to every single person at the supermarket about their water bill. But if you go into local body politics, you're owned all day, every day.
Yeah, but that also comes with an incredible opportunity to change the conversation. And that was clearly my angle into it. I think, you've nailed it straight away. My goal in life is to make a difference and help people, and that's what I've been doing through, Chorus and Xero and now into Callaghan. And you can absolutely make an impact through private business, and also in government. Our government leaders, though, have an extra responsibility in terms of the way that they operate and lead our country. And I would like to see government leaders or local body leaders who have more guts to stand up and lay out some of the big challenges we have. And I think because of the short-term political cycles and the need to get re-elected, that is not always there. So it was much easier for me to come out and say, driverless vehicles is coming. Do you know what? In the next decade, somewhere around there, 45% of our jobs are going to go. Who is talking about what are we doing about that? How do we need to retrain half of our population, and what jobs do they go into? And they are the big things that are going to impact people. And when you're out there talking to people, you can see how it's going to impact them. So, part of my frustration was I'm not seeing those conversations, and I think the leaders of our country need to be having those more.
Yeah, and the people that are having those conversations, you're Gareth Morgan's, the Opportunity Parties thing, talking about universal basic incomes and the like talking about things that long term and wonky is not electoral dynamite. Yeah,
that's right. It's not. Unfortunately, it will have a big impact on us as people. And, I think the worst outcome for us is to, get 2 to 3, 4 years into that kind of shift and realise, holy cow, what do we do? And that's just too late. And so I think, in the past, this change has been a lot slower. And so you've been able to more organically adjust to it. The pace of change coming through now is phenomenal, and we won't have that opportunity. So we need to be more prepared, I believe, than we have ever.
And there's big societal things. It's a little bit of a digression, but I saw someone mention a really interesting thing on Twitter. They said, well, if an Uber-type company puts driverless cars in for all of the taxis, you actually lose a job of last resort for middle-aged men, because that's where they go if they have fallen out of maybe an employment path. And then what does that do to society if you have a huge area of the workforce unable to get employment?
That's right. And that's the conversations we need to be having. And they are starting. There are pockets of them. They just need to be more joined up, and we need to be brave to stand up and have them. And, people that put their heads up to want to try and start those conversations, we shouldn't be shooting them down. We should be supporting them so we can have a good conversation about it. And only through having conversations, which I was criticised heavily about in the Mayoralty, can we actually start to understand, become aware, and then start to solve this.
Just before we get into Callaghan, just wanted to touch on governance in high growth companies, because that's kind of another area that you've been working in directorships and being chair of a number of outfits. Tell me about what you do there.
Well, it's very exciting, and I think you need to adjust your governance approach depending on the type of company. So how I would play a director role in Contact is a bit different than how I would as chair of Figure New Zealand, for example. So it's very much around much more of a kind of short-term you're managing cash flow a lot more. Because you don't have as much capital to invest, you are a bit more judicious about how you invest that. So when you're looking at offshore growth, for example, one of the companies that I've been working with, we're looking at expansion into the States and UK, then you do have to be more frugal and more disciplined around that. You don't have the complexity of some of the big companies in regards to policy, things like that. And actually some things are just a lot easier, like culture. When you've got 10, 20, 50 people, culture is much easier, and you've got that momentum of a startup. So the role is quite different, and I think it's about just, rolling your sleeves up and getting in and recognising the differences and supporting and challenging.
So with some of those companies, the high growth and heading out there, I imagine it's quite different to go from somewhere like Chorus, where every decision could end up in front of the Commerce Commission, or in the telecommunications landscape, where everything you do will get a competitor filing some kind of fair trade complaint or whatever, to then being able to just kind of go and put some, just go and do things.
Yeah, and again, I come back to, my children are going to have 4, 6, 8 careers. And for me, the more different things that I'm exposed to, the better I become in what I do. And I think that's, our kids are going to be phenomenal. The different lenses that you see things through, you then apply into other industries, other businesses, etc., and you uncover things that you haven't seen before. And I actually think that's where the magic happens. So you're right. I learned a lot at Chorus around regulation and treating everybody, with equivalence and all of that. And as I've gone through my other roles, it's like, oh gosh, actually that's a really interesting principle to bring into some of these other areas. So, the transferability of some of these things, mashing with different ideas is just magical.
And let's look at Callaghan, where a number of those things come together. So you've got the commercialization experience, sales, which is something that is the missing part of a lot of tech companies when they're looking to try and go from being a great idea to a great company. And then some of that kind of high growth governance, so some involvement there. And then you bring it together into a Callaghan Innovation where you get a bunch of cash to give to people. So that must be fun.
Well, I guess it is fun, isn't it? But I think there's also an incredible level of responsibility that comes, with giving that money away, because it is taxpayers' money. And the thing that you learn is that we work very hard for our money. And so that's the lens that I bring, that this is hard-earned New Zealanders' money. And we have a real responsibility to make sure that we are really effectively working alongside companies and encouraging them in innovation and technology. And we do that because we need our economy to grow. We need it to diversify. It's really important. So there's a real purpose there, which really motivates people who are working in Callaghan.
And how's it going at the moment? Because there was the review that said that there was some muddy strategy and maybe it was in a transition phase. And that, of course, brings out, I imagine also having a funding body, everyone who doesn't get funding has a lot of opinions, brings out people with a lot of armchair expertise.
Yes, and look, there's lots of that everywhere in every business. So look, it's going well. So if I talk personally, for me, I've had a great first, it's almost been a month now, and it's getting across the country, meeting people. In the midst of meeting 200 customers to hear their views on us. Obviously, government's our stakeholder and our owner. So, look, for me, it's been a great first month. And you're right, there's lots of opportunity to improve. And the big things there is really being clear on who we are and what we stand for, and communicating that to the people that we work with and have an interest in us. There's some great people in Callaghan and some incredible talent, and we're just not telling that enough. So we need to do a better job of that. Some of the impacts of what we're having, though, in terms of when we do work with businesses, the amount that their R&D spend is growing, or the new products and services that they are developing, or the export increase that they are getting, there's some good impacts happening. So we need to be sharing a bit more of that as well.
Yeah, to take it a step back, like what do you tell a friend at a barbecue who says, you're working at Callaghan? What's a Callaghan?
So, gosh, what's the pitch? The pitch really is, this is about making New Zealand more successful as a country by taking advantage of innovation and technology to grow and diversify. And if we can do that, and we can help our businesses create more jobs, create quite different new products and services, then that's very rewarding, not just to work there, but for our country. And we really do that through three ways. One, we give away money and we have to do that responsibly. Two, we work with customers around innovation programs, and that's really enjoyable in terms of working in there and helping them think differently. And
kind of dropping consultants in, or?
Yeah, we do it through a number of partners that we work with as well. So lean process programs, innovation programs. And then we also do it through R&D. So we have, quite a few hundred scientists, and actually they're working with businesses every day around innovation and manufacturing and biochemicals and all sorts of areas, advanced materials, and that is super exciting.
And so when you're doing that kind of work with the grant side of things, is that given, or is it like equity stakes? How does that work? Because there's a ongoing conversation about how governments should be providing.
Yeah, that's right. Look, it's given. At the moment it's given, and the different ways you can do it is you can give it obviously equity or R&D tax breaks. So there's a number of ways. The accelerators and incubators can often, the investment programs that go through there that they facilitate often result in equity. That's not something that the government is doing currently. So there's different models for different parts of the market.
Do you have a view on that, or do you think that equity, it kind of like, if you're going to be giving money, you may as well get a chunk? Or
yeah, I think it comes back to purpose. The purpose of government is not to make money out of these businesses. The purpose is to help them, get to the next step. But no, look, it's pretty early days still. I've got some thoughts, but nothing formulated. But I'm sure I could come back and talk to you about that.
Paul Callaghan said that we needed 100 kind of Nokias in New Zealand, and we've probably got a few now. And his idea of that was, these small countries similar to us have these large companies that can lift the whole ecosystem. You've got your Xeros, you've got your Gallaghers, you've got
Orions,
Vistas, Orions. Yeah. There's some really great international. How many more do we need?
Oh, quite a few. That's my belief. So we've definitely got a good number that are emerging, but we need more. I mean, so from some of the data that I've seen, we're definitely seeing an increase in R&D spend in that 0 to kind of 10, 15 and 15 to 50 employee size business, and that's great because that's where the growth pipeline is for businesses coming through to grow themselves into the next Xeros and the next Orions, etc. So we are making progress, but I think we do need more. There's quite a few programs out in the market now around hypergrowth as well, which are being brought in from overseas. So that's good for our companies as well.
And what are the next steps? Like, what are you going to? And you probably don't want to come in after 1 month and change everything, but what are you going to bring to the organisation? What are your plans?
Yeah, so it's really around recognising the existing capability that's in there and amplifying that and telling our story much better. So there's some things that we're doing really well and we need to be sharing that more. And there's some areas that we just need to improve on. And so that's my focus for the first 3 to 6 months, is to get some real traction in those areas. What does that look like? That looks like building a much more customer-centric Callaghan, so we're actually easier to deal with. It means that we need to eat our own dog food. We're a technology and innovation company. We're not a government. If we see ourselves as a government department, then we're in the wrong space in the market. So we've got some stuff to do in that bit. And as I said, there's some great people there, and it's just around providing that glue and the culture for Callaghan and moving that forward. So I'm just relishing the opportunity to do that.
And in light of that kind of customer-centric thing, say that I'm a person listening to this show that has a high-growth idea or an app, how do people actually get in? Is it a club where you need to know people? Is it
no,
open?
Not at all.
Like, how does it work?
No, it's open. And the great thing about Callaghan is that we have such a good view into the different types of services and support you can get across innovation in New Zealand. And so some of them are with us, but we can certainly connect you to many other people who can help you as well. So just pop onto the website. There's some contact details in there. We've got a range of people who specialise in sectors who can get back to you and work with you on what you need.
That's magic. Well, thank you so much for coming and talking to us today. Vic Crone, the new CEO of Callaghan Innovation. Thank you to Jose Barbosa for producing. Thank you to you for listening. And thanks to the people that popped on and put a review on iTunes. Very kind of you, and it does help. It'd be lovely if you might like to. See you next week.
You've been listening to Business is Boring, presented by Simon Pound. brought to you by The Spin-Off and Callaghan Innovation.
From the Spin-Off Podcast Network, that was Business is Boring, brought to you by SparkLab. Make sure you're following Business is Boring wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information on SparkLab, visit sparklab.co.nz.
Are you making the most of your KiwiSaver investment? Generate is an award-winning KiwiSaver provider with a track record of strong long-term performance. Making a smart decision now could add tens of thousands of dollars by the time you reach retirement. Book a no-obligation chat with a Generate KiwiSaver advisor today at generatekiwisaver.co.nz/get-advice. A copy of the product disclosure statement is available at generatekiwisaver.co.nz. The issuer of the scheme is Generate Investment Management Limited, and of course, past performance does not guarantee future returns.
The Spin-Off Podcast Network.